total world views collide in relationships and in life. Our operating system is in us, but you can't find it in an autopsy.
Whoa, 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 it wasn't no unbreakable.
Are your relationships on the brink of collapsing? Is your family life spiraling out of control? Well, let me say that there is a path. If you are brave enough, if you have enough courage to dig deep into what we're going to be talking about today, about archetypes, you could completely turn any relationship around. You can turn around any negative feeling that you have, any damage in some cases that you've done by not understanding the other person. And we're going to be going into a time very soon when relationships are everything. And it's going to be the only thing that holds you together with Sandy. I know it sounds a little dark, but if you've ever been at the precipice of the chasm of not knowing if you're going to make it and you're going to fall off because everything in your life has fallen apart, it's a very, very dark place. So our goal today, Rory and I's, is to make sure that you don't get to that edge, that you don't fall off that cliff, and that you can actually help others, not just yourself, do the same thing. So Rory Kilmartin, welcome.
Thanks so much, George. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I've been super excited about this conversation since we had a mutual friend introduce me to your work. And he, I forgot what it was. Like, it was one of those healthy eating bowls, right? We went to one of these little restaurants. He was explaining some of the archetypes, and I was completely drawn into it. I couldn't stop listening to it because every single point he hit about what you've taught him was dead on in my relationships that I've been in, the ones that have failed, the ones that are succeeding. And it made me understand deeper this world that we're living in. And I'd love you to maybe talk a little bit about what archetypes are, how important they are, and when did you start discovering this?
I'd love to. I'm going to go in reverse order. So I started discovering this in my early 30s. I'm a relationship researcher, and I've been fascinated about making sense of human relationships since I was 12. That was my first memory. I saw people who said they loved each other being cruel to each other. And as a young boy, that didn't resonate for me at all. So I assumed something was very wrong, and I felt like I had to solve that mystery. So I spent my first 15 years researching different models of relationship, and I distinguished essentially people who have mastered relationships have like a mature relationship to relating, and people who struggle in relationships have a survival relationship to relating, if that makes sense. So I figured all of that out, but then the wheels kind of fell off in midlife for me in my early 30s, and I realized I was still missing major pieces of the puzzle. And then almost immediately, this knowledge started pouring through me. I worked with a friend and mentor, and he was like my sounding board, and it just came through me, and I kind of gave up my 30s to figure this out. So what did I figure out in a simple way? An archetype is like a universal expression of the psyche. And the simple way of saying it is it's like an operating system. So we're all familiar, excuse me one second, we're all familiar with operating systems, right? We have this modern day language. Well, the key introductory concepts is this idea that we all look like humans. You and I look like humans. When you're in a room of humans, no one looks like a donkey or a sloth or an alligator, right? So we all look like humans. But the first key point is we're not the same. We look like we're the same, but we're not the same. So over the last 200 to 250 million years, mammals have been evolving to get to the point where we are. And the mammalian psyche has evolved to see 4 different types of humans. It's in donkeys and horses, but I don't bother with animals. Humans are challenging enough. So we're not the same. We run 4 different operating systems. There's 4 different aspects of the human psyche that have evolved to ensure the species has survived. 2 of them take care of the external world. 2 of them take care of the internal world. 2 of them are more interested in taking care of other people. 2 of them are more interested in focusing on self and the dynamics that arise between all of this. But there's a couple of things that are really interesting about operating systems. The first is 0% of your iPhone operating system, the code, 0% of the code is designed to reveal itself. Like it doesn't want to reveal itself. The other thing that's interesting about operating systems is 0% of the code is written to explain itself. The other thing that's interesting about operating systems, if you imagine an iPhone and an Android phone, 0% of your smartphone operating system is attempting to make sense of the operating system of my Android phone, if I had one. So operating systems are not trying to figure out any other operating systems. They're not trying to reveal themselves, and they're not trying to explain themselves. They're just running the system. And it's the same for humans. So we very rarely marry the person who has the same operating system as us. And our operating system assumes that they understand the way we see the world, because our archetypal nature is the absolute totality of our worldview. If you are, for example, so I name them animals because it's so much easier to explain. So the 4 animals are gorilla, wolf, fox, and sheep. If you remember, did you ever read Aesop's fables when you were a kid?
It's been some time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? But I grew up with Aesop's fables, but a fable is a tale through the medium of animals to explain an aspect of the human condition. That's the definition of a fable. So Aesop wrote these fables about the lamb and the crow, or the fox and the crow, the lamb and the wolf, and the lion and the wolf and the crow. Like these were these stories. So I knew that it's animal names was a lot easier than respectfully LTNJ and the IPQR or whatever those other kinds of things are. So the sheep operating system, for example, cares about emotions. It cares about connection. It cares about the village. It cares about interconnectivity. And it cares about emotional safety. Those types of people don't want people to come to emotional harm, as an example. Sheep often marry wolves. Wolves care much less about emotional well-being, but they will run towards gunfire. They will run into burning buildings. Endless stories. Very sadly, it's fresh in the news that the events that happened in Bondi in the last 48 hours, the stories of people running towards the gunmen at the risk of their own lives to protect the innocent. This is the wolf mind. It's an honorable death to give up your life to protect the innocent. And the wolves won't think twice about that. So wolves and sheep marry a lot. And there's reasons for that. But the fact that the point I'm making in quite a long-winded way is that these 4 different aspects of the human psyche have a different role and a different agenda. And they have evolved. It's not 3 and it's not 5. It's 4. And they've evolved over the millennia to ensure the survival of the species. And our archetypal nature, our operating system, again, I'll say it again because it's important, is the absolute totality of our worldview. And we then project that worldview. To use this simple example, so sheep, for example, have a total and absolute worldview that anger is bad. Getting cross, getting irritated, getting frustrated, and expressing that is bad, because connection and interconnectivity is the most important thing. Wolves, they quite like it. It's like, if I get a bit annoyed with you, it's because I'm conveying that this is important. You're being annoying, stop it. I've raised my voice a bit so that you know that this is important, right? And that's totally normal for wolves. You probably know a few wolves yourself. Like, they don't have a problem just raising a bit of volume, adding a bit of heat to convey that this is an issue for them. To sheep, this is an absolute violation of the soul, because all anger is bad. So this is like a really simple example of a myriad of examples where total worldviews collide in relationships and in life. So I'm going to hand back over to you in a moment. Not knowing this leaves you at a big disadvantage if you deal with humans. If you're raising children, working with clients, selling to prospects, marketing to the marketplace, or making sense of your brother, your partner, your mother-in-law, it doesn't matter. If you're dealing with humans, understanding these 4 operating systems is an enormous benefit to the rest of your life.
I think that for me, when I started hearing about the archetypes the first time, they I started thinking I'm this one, and then I started hearing the other ones. I'm like, oh no, I'm a little bit of that one too. And so I started feeling like I was part of a lot of different of these archetypes until it started settling down. I started understanding how they interact between each other. So I'm glad that you explained that a little bit about wolves and sheep. I also started to see how the relationships that I've had that have fallen apart, who that other person was in comparison to mine archetype. And I also know, which we'll probably get into, that there are archetypes of a younger archetype, like an undeveloped archetype too, as well, which hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get there, what I'd love everyone to do is to take out a piece of paper or something you can take a note on, even if it's your phone. And Rory, if you could go through the 4 different archetypes and give some of the characteristics of each of those archetypes, I'd like people to start identifying, to say which ones you might be or which characteristics you think you might hold from these archetypes. But if you can explain that to us, that'd be great.
Sure, be my pleasure. So the first thing to think about is that all of my research suggests, so 19 years now of total focus on this area, is that we're born with an archetypal leaning. That's what I call it. In a similar way that we're born left-handed or right-handed, 10% of us are born left-handed. 1% of us are born with some traits of psychopathy. And we're roughly 50-50 biological male and female for the purpose of procreation. So the evolutionary stable ratio decides the appropriate ratios of various characteristics. So there's a certain ratio of these 4 aspects of the human psyche. I don't know what that ratio is, but now we'll just guess it's 25% across the board. It's probably close to accurate, to be fair. So we're born with a strong leaning in one direction. So we'll start with the gorillas. So the gorillas they care about the future. They like details, planning, organizing, making plans. They go to bed at night thinking about the plan. They wake up in the morning thinking about the plan. And they care about the plan on behalf of everyone. They're very generous in the sense that they care about the group. They care about the business community. They care about the faculty at school. They care about the community, the congregation, whatever the community is. And they want life to work for everyone. It's very important that's clear. So gorillas care about the details, planning, the future. They see issues coming down the path before anybody else around them. Gorillas are the type of people that have got a year reminder for when their passport's going to go out of date. They put it in their diary a year before they've got to update their passport. That's how organized they are. And what else to say about them? Yeah, so they like being in charge. They prefer to be in charge. They like to delegate because they go to bed at night thinking about the plan. So if you're not thinking about the plan like they are, why should you be in charge? I'm the one that's thinking about it. So they kind of feel like they get the right to be in charge. I'll go next to the wolves. So the gorillas are they're the external world focused. Like I said, 2 of them are external. So gorillas are external. They're thinking about the external systems that make life work. Gorillas are also an external world archetype. They care more about executing a mission than planning it. Wolves like to do things. They like to get things done. They don't like the idea of nothing to do. It makes them antsy. Wolves like being on a mission. They like getting things done. They're very goal orientated in that regard. They don't mind conflict. They don't mind arguing. They don't mind raising the volume. They'll tell you if you're being annoying. There's no problem for them because the mission is more important to them than being liked. Being liked is a distant second to fulfilling the mission. If you think about it throughout history, the wolves have been the bouncers of human history. They've been standing at the gate of the village, walking the perimeter, casually relaxed, ready to snap into an instant volcanic violence if required to deal with a marauding gang that suddenly comes around the corner. So they have instant access to heat. And they don't mind aggression because they know deep down that this permanent mission that wolves have is keeping the innocent safe. Wolves are aware of safe energy coming around the corner when they're out having dinner. They're aware of ungrounded energy crossing the road over there. They're just vigilant for danger because wolves know that evil and darkness is real. They know it. Not everybody knows it. The innocent don't know. That's not their job. Their job is to be innocent and to do things, other things. So the wolves want to be on a mission. They want to get things done. They don't mind taking orders if they've agreed to them. Like the military has a chain of command. They've got no problem with the chain of command, but they want to do things and they want to keep people safe and they're willing to die for the innocent. As I described earlier, it's very real right now in Australia. Third is the foxes. So the first of the two internal groups. So the foxes are the creative, playful ideas. They live in the world of ideas. All the innovations and inventions, all the new technologies are coming from this fox magician world of new technologies and new ideas. In order to access imagination and creativity, you have to be in the moment. So whereas gorillas want to be in the future, foxes want to be in the moment. Foxes love not being in the future. They want to be in the now. So that's where the wow is. And foxes are the best comedians, the best actors and actresses, the best inventors, the best entrepreneurs. They are the best storytellers. They're the most fun to have at your dinner party. They live in the moment. Life is magical, sparkly, and wonderful. And they want to just create new stuff, whether it's art, photography, architecture, comedy, theater. They want to bring new. They like new. Gorillas like order. Gorillas don't like new. Gorillas like proven and dependable that's going to keep life consistent. Foxes want to change things up. Gorillas and foxes marry all the time, but I'll get to that in a moment. For your audience and those of you listening, if you're a fox or a gorilla, this is going to, I can see you shaking your heads right now, okay? I can see it. So foxes want to live in the moment. They want to be creative. They don't like committing to the future. If you ask a gorilla, hey, I'm having dinner around at my place, 6 o'clock, a few friends coming around, does that work for you? And they're free. They're going to say, oh, fantastic, 6 o'clock. Now Friday's taken care of. Now I can focus my attention on the other parts of my diary that are unclear. If you say to a fox, hey, buddy, 6 o'clock, my place, dinner, a few people coming around, they say, oh, that sounds great. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm a maybe. Count me in. No, I'll let you know. Yeah. Why? Because they don't know what they're going to be doing at 5:55 on Friday. It's too much because they've got to keep all options open. Foxes want to keep all possibilities open because they want to go where their intuition takes them and where the most magic is. And they can't guarantee 6 o'clock on Friday, but they love the invitation, but they're not going to tell you until 5:55. So the final group then I call the sheep, and another internal group, and I kind of touched on them a bit earlier. So they care about connection, the interconnectivity of the group. They care about emotional safety. They care about emotions. Emotions are really important to sheep. And they feel, so the other thing I didn't say about foxes is that freedom is the most important thing for foxes. Freedom is everything to foxes. So love is everything to sheep. Workability is everything to gorillas. Making life work is what is the agenda of the gorilla realm. The wolves, it's winning missions. It's moving life forwards. It's getting things done. Is everything, and they have a secondary one, which is keeping people safe. That's their primary mission that they'll die for. For sheep, it's love. They are the gatekeepers of the Holy Grail, which in the sheep mind is love and connection. So these are the four aspects of the human condition expressed as simply as I can in simple words. But the key thing to recognize is that each has its own agenda, its own role, its own gift, its own purpose driven by the operating system. So when we are in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a child or an adult, intimate partnership or not, if we don't understand the default operating system that governs every single molecule of their being and every fiber of their being, they're going to confuse us and annoy us if we don't understand what their agenda is. This is making sense.
Mm-hmm. If you're unsure about, let's say, your partner, and you're like, they're kind of a bear. They like organization. They're very organized, but they also take control, or they'll rush into like a heated building, on fire. Maybe they're a little unsure about which of these archetypes they are. Is there a formula or a certain series of questions or anything that you could ask or observe, certain activities or actions that would be easier to say, okay, that they're gravitate more to being a bear versus a wolf versus a sheep, versus I'm sorry, bear. I meant gorilla. Sorry,
Yeah,
keep thinking bears.
Yeah.
But like, is there something that would be easier for people to figure out what their partner is?
Well, I mean, we have a quiz which we recommend, which is extremely accurate just because the differences are so obvious. But the more you understand these four operating systems, the more obvious it becomes. Sometimes people ask me, like, do I analyze people? I say, I don't analyze people. It doesn't interest me. Unless perhaps on the rare occasion it's important to. But for the most part, people just wear their archetypal nature on their forehead. If you meet somebody who really wants to connect to you with lightness and humor first, a little bit like you and I did at the beginning, like we just brought some lightness and we took away this stress and we had a little laugh together before we began, like that kind of knows that you and I have got a little bit of fox in us. Like we want to be serious in life, but we also want to be able to be slightly lighthearted because we don't want to take ourselves too seriously. So if somebody has fox in them, they're very happy connecting with a bit of humor and lightheartedness. That reassures foxes that you're not a tyrant, because freedom is the most important thing to foxes. So foxes don't like very serious people because very serious people are one step away from becoming tyrannical. So sometimes people just wear it on there. Like, I'll give you a quick example. Jocko Willing, who I really like and appreciate, he is a gorilla wolf. How do I know this? Because on one of the covers of one of his books, it's How to Lead and Win. It's on the front of his book. Like, he literally tells you he's a gorilla wolf. And he's serious. I'm sure he has a sense of humor, but it's not the obvious thing about him, right? He's serious and a warrior. So he's a gorilla wolf. And it's on the front cover of his book. So
you could be a hybrid, is what you're saying. It's not like you're a purist, like I am only a wolf, I am only a sheep. Like you could be a hybrid of multiple.
So the way I say it is, the first step is to understand what your primary is, what the thing is that's the most obvious for you, the one that resonates the most for you. So what resonates the most for me is sheep. I care about connection. I don't like it when people are unhappy with me. So I'm a likable person. I'm agreeable in that regard. And then secondly is I like freedom. I like living in the moment. I like ideas. Like I've been solving the mystery of the psyche for 19 years now. And only a fox would take on that endeavor. So we have a primary and a secondary. And the primary, from my understanding, we're born with. And then the secondary is typically a reaction to the imbalanced energy of our childhood. So the work that I do, I call archetypal wisdom, and it doesn't really require endless hours of deep revisiting of childhood trauma, which maybe has its place. I know there's a debate in that regard. I think it's wise to know why we are the way we are, but only as a stepping stone to overcoming it. So I don't recommend people get lost. The only question that my work asks is just, what was the imbalanced energy of your childhood? Was it imbalanced wolf? Was it imbalanced gorilla? Like, was it loud, aggressive, kind of bully energy, which is the wolf, imbalanced wolf realm? Was it controlling, bossy, tyrants, freedom reducing, which is the imbalanced energy of the gorilla? Was it weak, powerless, tolerating mistreatment of others, imbalanced sheep energy? Or was it, imbalanced fox is a chaotic, often dishonest, gaslighting, inconsistency, maybe food isn't on the table. So very few of us are raised in a truly balanced family home. If you were, glad for you. Um, for most of us, there was some imbalanced expression. And the imbalanced expression of our childhood that we had to deal with the most, kind of, from my understanding, often forms our secondary. So I was raised with a lot of imbalanced gorilla energy. So therefore the fox in me is strong. So therefore I'm a sheep fox. So it's a primary and a secondary. Now, just quickly, we're all capable of expressing the traits of all four, but that doesn't make us it. It's a little bit like there are things that I can do for years, literally years, and not get tired. And there are some things that I can do that are maybe a bit more external world. I can do them for a while, but they're not my natural place and I get exhausted. So we can do them all, perhaps, not always, but let's just say we can. But there are some things that you can just do and it feeds you, it gives you energy, and it feels like you're in your home. And then there's some things that you can do, but it's not your forte.
Interesting. If you know what your archetype is, or the recipe, of your archetypes as they come together, what different characteristics and traits that you kind of gravitate to in different situations. I can imagine that sometimes when it's necessary, anyone can become a wolf, or sometimes it's necessary to become a sheep from time to time, in certain situations. But how could someone use that for their benefit to, like, we'll get into the relationship stuff here in a little bit, because I think that's going to be a really a strong part of our discussion today. But if you know what kind of archetype you are and what your strengths are, how could you use that as a benefit to accelerate either success, in one area of your life? It could be, money, it could be relationships, family, like whatever that might be, or just on a personal level, accomplishing the things that maybe you've always wanted to, that have eluded you because you've been forced into a role that maybe didn't really suit you.
Yeah, this is great. So I think there's a roundabout answer, which is it's really good to identify your primary and secondary archetype as a step. And then this then helps you understand what your gift is. What are my natural strengths? Because once you understand what your agenda is, so people are capable of writing down what their values are. It's like, if you go back to the smartphone analogy, it's like the apps and everything you can see on your phone, that's the known world. You can describe that, you can articulate it. But if I was to say to you, now tell me what the value is of your operating system, say, I don't even know what you mean. What are you even talking about? So it is extremely powerful to understand, because when I say operating system, I mean the invisible world without language. There is a world inside all of us that is invisible and has no language. I kind of tell this story like autopsy is a serious business. Yes, you would agree? Like language.
If you're alive and someone's doing it on you, yeah.
That's serious, yes. But the language is important, right? Because it could be the difference between someone going to prison for life or executed or being set free. So the language around autopsy is important, and autopsies is serious business. No autopsy in human history has ever said, and we found the archetypal nature of this person, and it was, which is a kind of playful way of saying, like, it's invisible. It's like if we got the tools from the iPhone engineers to take apart our iPhone, could you find the operating system?
Yeah. No, not the software. You can
No.
find the components, but not the software, right?
You can find bones and ligaments and stomach and stuff, metaphorically speaking, but you can't find the operating system. It's in the phone somewhere, but you can't see it. You can't find it. You can't dissect it. And it's the same for humans, right? Our operating system is in us, but you can't find it in an autopsy, is my point, right? Now I've got to try and come back to your original question, because my brain explodes and goes in 1,000 different directions when I talk about this. So it's very valuable to know what your primary and your secondary is, because then you understand what your agenda is, and you understand what you're naturally good at. I worked with a lawyer recently. She discovered this work came and did some work with me. She went back to her office and she realized that she had a fox doing a gorilla job and a gorilla doing a fox job, and she switched them. And instantly the whole office's energy and whatever metric for well-being just shot up, because she just had them in the wrong role and they didn't know. And now they're kind of doing the job that's much better for them, archetypally speaking. So it's really helpful to find out what we're good at. And it also helps us to find out what we are less naturally inclined to do. So for example, as a sheep fox, I'm less inclined to do external world stuff. Like I constantly need to sort of schedule external world stuff, paying bills, reconciling bank statements, organizing my diary, taking care of the future, planning a trip, whatever that is. Like I kind of know that I have to get into that mindset because it's not my natural mindset. My natural mindset is connecting and being in the moment and enjoying the journey and solving mysteries. So when we know what we're good at, we also know what is not going to be our natural competence. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, most entrepreneurs are foxes. Most successful entrepreneurs are fox wolves. Most entrepreneurs that fail are fox sheep. So when you have fox wolves, they want to employ a gorilla to execute their ideas and map them all out and keep timelines and to-do lists and things like that. Because foxes are great at ideas, but they need somebody else to execute them. So the more you understand these 4 operating systems, which takes a little bit of time, but not too long. People who are listening to this, their minds are already popping. It's already lighting up things like, oh my goodness, that explains my ex-husband. Oh my goodness, that's why I never got on with that parent, but I got on with that parent. So it's like, there's our archetypal home, there's a place we can go and live in, and there's a place we can visit. So I'm from England. I currently live in Australia, and the other day I visited New Zealand. Archetypally, I'm a sheep fox, and every now and then I have to go and live in gorilla land to organize my business, my affairs, and engage in relationships and podcasts like this, and move everything forwards from a business perspective. There's a lot of external world stuff. Every now and then, very rarely, because of the company I keep, I have to go into the wolf world and deal with Vikings and barbarians and ensure that nobody mistakes my kind demeanor for weakness, so that the barbarians are kept at bay. But for the most part, I don't have to do that. So I kind of know where my areas of natural competence are as a result of knowing this. So somebody might say to me, hey, I need this to happen. Can you do this? And I'm like, I want to say yes, but the real answer is that I'd love to say yes, but this is not my area of expertise. Either someone's got to sit with me while I do it, or we're going to have to find someone else. That is truth speaking. That's straight talk. That moves life forwards. Often we don't know. We just don't know until we know this. Or often, for example, someone might say to their partner, hey, I can't do that. You need to take care of this weekend. And it's really simple and obvious to one person, but to the other person, it's going to take all of their mental resourcefulness to muster the appropriate attention to fulfill that task, because it's so far outside their natural mental rhythms.
I think this is a good point to kind of pivot over into the relationship side, because you made a good point where you have the visionary, it's been called visionary, and implementer role, which would
Yep.
be your fox and your gorilla, right?
Yep.
Visionary fox, implementer gorilla, for example. And then your sales people are wolves, customer service are sheep, right? I could see
Yep.
that very clearly in my mind.
Yep.
And project management and all that other stuff. You mentioned early on that there's very often, certain archetypes marry other certain archetypes. Maybe you can go through some of that exactly, and why is that? Why does those things happen? Is it the yin and yang? You're trying to complete yourself on a spiritual or soul level, or is it something else?
It's a massive question. So the first piece of the puzzle for those listening at home is that the majority of us do not marry or get into a long-term committed relationship with somebody with the same operating system as us. And that's a massive statement. Like, it's a big one. Because most people, first of all, most people don't even know that there are 4 operating systems. Most people have absolutely no idea. Okay. So the second thing is then that we don't end up marrying our own, which on paper seems like it would be a good thing, but it's actually, there's a reason why. So then one step further is 2 of the archetypes are oppositional to the other 2. So gorillas and foxes have opposing agendas. Gorillas want to take care of the future, foxes want to take care of the present. Gorillas want to organize and delegate and tell people what to do. Foxes will not be told what to do. They can't stand it. They will not be told what to do. It's so bad for foxes. If they think to themselves what they have to do, then they can't do it themselves, even though they told them that they have to do it. That's how you know you're a fox, when you know you can't even tell yourself what to do. So gorillas and foxes are oppositional, and wolves and sheep are oppositional. Sheep really care about emotions and emotional well-being. Wolves don't really care much about emotions, just about the mission. Wolves quite like anger and volume and intensity because it conveys importance. Sheep can't stand conflict, aggression, loudness, etc. Gorillas and foxes marry all the time. Like, it's a spectacularly high percentage. Wolves and sheep marry an enormous amount. So to your question, there's two major answers. The first is, when a gorilla meets a fox, the gorilla is thinking, the fox is thinking, you don't have enough fun in your life. I'm going to bring fun and laughter and adventure. I'm going to take you to see the world, and we're going to laugh together, and you are going to adore me and celebrate me and worship me for bringing all this fun and joy and laughter and adventure to your life. And the gorilla is looking at them thinking, who are you, feral creature? You don't even read your bank statements. I'm going to bring order to your life. I'm going to get you ship shape and Bristol fashion. I'm going to get you squared away, and you're going to celebrate me and be delighted by my presence in your life because I'm going to bring order to your chaos, and you're going to be thrilled. So this kind of playful way of saying that, on the one hand, people get to feel like, I'm going to get to express my gift to you inside our relationship. My gift has a place. Like, I once interviewed a couple, and they were both foodies. They both loved to cook. And they hated it because neither of them got to feel like they got to express their gift for each other, because they both wanted to do it in the kitchen, if that makes sense. Probably a better way of saying that. They both wanted to cook in the kitchen, okay? So this is an example of their gift didn't get to feel expressed. So when gorillas meet foxes, both parties feel like, I will be able to express my gift to you because it's missing in your life. So the same with wolves and sheep, okay? The sheep are like, you, what's the playful way of saying it? I can't think of it. You scary creature, you don't understand bedding and cuddles and lions and tenderness. I'm going to bring all of the soft qualities to your life, and you're going to be thrilled when I get you this soft bedding, etc., etc. I'm going to take care of your heart, thinks the sheep. And the wolves are like, oh, goodness, you pathetic creature. You can't take care of yourself. I will protect you. I will protect you. I will keep you from harm's way. And I will always be able to express the wolf code, which is to protect the innocent. So wolves are very attracted to sheep. Sheep are attracted to wolves. And gorillas and foxes, vice versa. But it's important that while we're having this conversation, it all sounds obvious, but you've got to understand, out there in the world, almost nobody knows this. Almost nobody has any idea about this. People are just getting into relationships, and they don't understand what's driving them. And then when they try and express their gift, often it doesn't land, which is where the heartbreak is. So the second main reason is because, and this is the more sole reason is that we are more often than not attracted to an archetypal expression of the parent that didn't love us the way we wanted to be loved. There's a very the question is actually about attraction. And what I like to say is that attraction is not a choice, and it's a fascinating subject. And I don't have enough time to talk about attraction now, but this is what we're talking about. What are the invisible mechanisms of attraction? How is it that there's huge amounts of evidence for people being in a perfectly happy relationship in their younger life? Nothing's wrong. It comes to an end for a myriad of reasons. And we then end up falling head over heels in love with somebody, committing to them, getting married in front of our friends and family and whatever word we use for God, and living under a roof, starting a family, sharing finances, and going all in with this person who very quickly we realize is hugely challenging for us. And this is happening all over the world. So this mechanism of attraction is fascinating. And from an archetypal perspective, we often are attracted to the person that is our archetypal opposite. And often that person is an expression of the imbalanced parent that we struggled with the most, and we didn't receive the love from them that we wanted. Yay.
Yeah. First thing that came in my mind when we were talking about that, Rory, was there are a lot of people who come from broken families, sometimes multiple step parents that, almost a revolving door of step parents, or maybe there was a death. In my case, my mother passed early, and how does that play into the archetypal scenario?
I think
Maybe the absence of the parent first, I think, as opposed to like the revolving door. I think that might be an easier thing to make sense of for people
Sure.
if they had a loss like that.
I think the way to think about family units is very much a little bit like a constellation of planets. I think that's a helpful way of thinking about it. So the way I kind of think about it is like the moon moves the entire weight of the oceans constantly just because it's there. Like, I find the whole thing absolutely fascinating. Like, that is just because it's there. There's no tractor beam. It's just moving the oceans, right? In a similar way, when a planetary body comes into orbit in our lives, it impacts our oceans, metaphorically. So when we're single and going through our lives, we are a certain version. When another planetary body arrives, it impacts us. And these impacts are involuntary until we become archetypally mature. But even then, the forces are still working on us. So what do I mean by that? I was working with somebody not too long ago that was in the final stages of becoming a PhD in a particular type of surgery. And very smart, but he was struggling and he was recommended to come and speak with me. And we very quickly determined that he was having a relationship with a bristling wolf. So at home with her, he was quite sheepy because that's the involuntary reaction to imbalanced wolf energy, sheepy urges. His boss at work was a very strong gorilla, imbalanced gorilla. So at work, so the reaction to the involuntary reaction to very imbalanced gorilla energy is foxiness. The more tyrannical a person is, the more the urge to lie and be slippery and cunning to get out of trouble, because those people are scary, right? So he was being very sheepy at home and at the weekends with his girlfriend, and very foxy with his boss. So he came to me, he's like, I feel like I'm bipolar, but I know I'm not. Can you explain it to me? So within an hour, I'd explained the whole thing for him, just holding his head in his hands. I was like, this explained everything. Like, I know, it's quick. It's a quick explanation. So I'm sharing this with you because the presence of other people impacts our oceans. And the closer we are to somebody, the more the impact is. And therefore, when somebody passes away, sorry to hear about your mom, when somebody leaves, the void has more involuntary movements. So, for example, somebody has to step into that parental void, perhaps, I'm making this up, when the other parent is still at work with the younger children. As just a really sort of simple, kind of obvious example. So when there's an absent parent, that absence creates an impact. Like if the moon disappeared, apparently it would be a disaster for the earth. But you get my point. If a metaphorical moon is no longer around, the oceans will have to adjust.
So we're looking for a way to fill that void, and that is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that there are involuntary pressures. So, for example, if somebody, let's just say, becomes a widow, and then their new partner enters their lives and the lives of the children, and they are very balanced, and they're a grounding, calm, rational, loving energy, everyone's lives will improve. Everyone's lives will improve. The children will sleep better. The meal times will be nicer. The more balanced a person is, the more balance brings order. If somebody passes away who was relatively balanced, and then a new partner comes in who is, let's say, imbalanced, everyone's lives become more chaotic. The waters become more choppy in boating terms. So I'm trying to point to this. My first answer to your question is this idea that we are impacted, whether we like it or not, by the emotional balance and maturity or immaturity of the people around us, whether we like it or not. So if we have, if a new person comes in and they're very balanced, it's wonderful. Everyone benefits. But the opposite is also true.
Yeah, too bad we don't have questionnaires for all those people who come into our lives before they're allowed in. Before you can get through the door and get the secret password, you have to take this questionnaire real quick.
Yes. I think good old-fashioned courting had its place.
Yeah, definitely. Not on an app, a sleepover app. So let's dial back over to you said the unions where people find their kind of like their opposite, right? So like say the wolf sheep, or the gorilla fox. What are the dangers there? Like how can that go horribly wrong? Because I think what I heard from you, Rory, is like you're trying to give a gift to somebody else. Like each person's trying to outgift each other, and I that could cause friction, obviously, and cause imbalances of its own. But what are the dangers if you don't realize early enough what's really going on there?
The answer is brutal consequences. The answer is so let me back up one step and say that I work specifically, and I'm very explicit about it. I work with kind, well-meaning, benevolent people. I work with people that are capable of telling the truth, looking in the mirror, putting their hand up and saying, yeah, I do that. I don't work with unpleasant people. I don't work with unconscious people. And I don't work with people typically who have personality disorders. It's just my personal preference. And also because my findings are so powerful that they belong in the hands of the benevolent and no one else. So why was I making that point? Because I focus on, and in order for me to answer your question, I'm going to speak about kind, well-meaning, benevolent people who love each other, who wake up in the morning and they want the best for each other and their children and the bus driver and anyone they meet during the day. So I want to give that as like a caveat. I'm speaking about those people, okay? And the reason I say this is because unpleasant people create unpleasant experiences for other people. It's not a mystery. The mystery is why they're unpleasant, but it's not a mystery in relationships. The relationship puzzle, from my perspective, and many other researchers and experts like myself, is how is it kind, well-meaning, benevolent people who love each other take each other into hell? Because that's a mystery. Like, that's a proper mystery. Because on paper, it should be relatively straightforward. Like, you're a good person, I'm a good person, we love each other, we care about each other, we want the best for each other. How could this possibly go wrong? And it does, which is back to your question. So how does it go wrong? it goes wrong incrementally over time because we begin to fray the fabric of our relationship when our archetypal gift or expression is not received, or worse, shamed. So if, for example, I'll use an example, let's say a protective wolf, someone's come round and someone has put this was a true story, somebody, hardworking dad comes home Saturday morning, trying to have a family breakfast, young family, he's tired, he wants to have a nice family meal, he's not concentrating, he puts the cafetiere down too close to the toddler in the high chair, the toddler pulled it over onto themselves. Traumatic, disastrous, right? Now, hypothetically, if somebody puts a mug of hot coffee too close to a toddler in a high chair, and the wolf sees the toddler reaching for it, the wolf isn't going to go, would you mind? They're going to go, stop. Like, they're going to speak with some heat because they're going to stop some danger. Now, if the sheep wife or husband disconnects from that little expression of heat and sulks and ghosts them and gives them the silent treatment for the rest of the weekend, that's bad. And that's just kind of like one simple example where that wolf just did their job. They're protecting the innocent. It's their gift. Remember, this is the person that's willing to run towards gunfire. They will run into burning buildings. There was a great story of, not great story, there was a true story of this guy walking home and he sees this fire and he sees the kids in the window and he punches through the windows, goes in, gets 2 kids out, goes back for another kid. He comes back and he's bleeding from the glass and he's got first-degree burns around his forearms. And there's footage of the first responders coming up and saying, "Are you okay?" And they're trying to treat him. He's shoving them away. Like, "Are the kids okay? Let's focus on the kids." And he's like in a real mess. And that's what we're talking about. There are people that will go into the burning building without hesitation, run towards the gunman without hesitation. And that's their big-hearted gift. Because the wolves have the biggest hearts. Because there is no bigger heart than willing to die for the person you love without hesitation. And this sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not an exaggeration. It's absolutely real in the nervous systems of wolves. And nobody ever says thank you. No one ever says, "Hey, thanks for another year being willing to die for me." No one says that.
Where does gratitude, I think that's a really interesting point. Where does gratitude and thankfulness have its place in these relationships?
Well, with the absence of what I call archetypal wisdom, not very much. When you understand the agenda of your partner, like really understand it the way my team and I are able to articulate it for people, what rises up is empathy, compassion, and appreciation. Because it's like, well, now I understand you. Now I understand what you're up to. I never really understood you before. So one of the things that happens consistently around the work I do is couples stop fighting overnight. Because often it's basically the same fight, different day. It's pretty much always the same fight. For gorillas and foxes, the gorilla's trying to tell the fox what to do and the fox isn't having it. Same fight, different day. The wolves get a little frustrated with the sheep because they're being a bit meek, being a bit weak, and they're not, gathering themselves and with a bit of fortitude to do the task or whatever the task is, and the wolf gets a little bit irritated. And for the sheep, that's just like a deep violation of the soul. The wolf is just trying to tell you, "Hey, I love you. Be stronger. I love you." The gorilla is trying to say, "Hey, if you do this before you go, it'll be great." What they're saying is, "I love you." But the fox hears, "I'm a North Korean dictator and I'm telling you what to do."
My finger's on the button.
Yeah, like I'm out of here. I'm in slippery mode. I'm not gonna be told what to do. But really what the gorilla is saying is, "I love you. I went to sleep at night thinking about today. I woke up this morning thinking about today. I really want you to have a great day and a great weekend. I love you. If you do this now, everything's going to be smoother and better because I've spent a few hours thinking about it. And you're just bimbling along in Foxland, getting up to goodness knows what in your mind. And I'm thinking about it because I love you. But sheep don't hear I love you from wolves and vice versa. So we notice gratitude according to our operating system. What we judge is what we should say thank you for or be grateful for.
So there's all these intangibles, as far as like our actions that we're trying to say thanks, we're trying to say I love you, we're trying to express ourselves through, you know, like you said, these archetypal reactions and interactions. How should we be talking to the other person? How should we express that if they don't get it right out of the gate? Like maybe the sheep doesn't understand, doesn't get that, I'm a wolf. How should she or I express ourselves to the other in that gratitude, in that compassionate way, in that loving way? That's not the default nature that they don't understand. That's not the language that they don't understand.
This is a brilliant question. So let me just pre-frame it by saying, so let's talk about communication. And the first thing for everyone listening to understand is that all 4 archetypes have a different communication set of preferences. All 4 prefer a different style of communication. All 4 have a preference of how they want to be listened to, because there's different styles of listening. Just because you're hearing someone doesn't mean you're listening. So that's the very first big bombshell. Mark Manson did this great piece of research. He interviewed 1,500 couples and some thruples, he enjoyed telling us. And he categorized them with people that struggled in relationships and people who thought they'd mastered relationships. And then one of the questions he asked them was, what's the most important thing in relationships? All the people that are struggling said communication. Not all, the majority, or it basically said communication. And the people that have mastered relationships and are doing well in relationships, they didn't say communication. They said respect. If you're struggling in relationships, where your struggle is going to show up is in communication. That's why people who are struggling say communication is the most important thing. That's why there's so many communication courses. But what's the good of a communication course if you can't differentiate the 4 different communication styles and preferences of the 4 different operating systems of human beings? You're likely going to get a communication course created by one of the operating systems, probably a sheep, because sheep write the majority of relationship books and communication courses, and wolves can't bloody stand them. So now to your question, how do we do this? Well, the more we understand these 4 operating systems, again, it's the same message. The more you understand these operating systems, the more you understand their communication styles and preferences. So for example, gorillas like detail, not fluff. They like what we think of as concrete data. I'm going to pick up the package on the way home. I'm going to be home by 6 p.m. And then I'm going to text you that I've got the package. Is that okay with you? Clear and precise and detailed. That just reassures the gorilla nervous system. The gorilla nervous system is like, thank goodness. They just want details and precision and accuracy. Wolves, so gorillas don't like vague. Yeah, I'll get to it later. Later? Later's not in my diary. Later's not specific. What are you talking about later? Let's go with the flow. I'll call you at the perfect time, which is one of my favorite sayings. So foxes will say that I'll call you at the perfect time, which means I'll call you when I feel it. But to a gorilla, that's like, what are you talking about? It's meaningless, right? So foxes like to speak with freedom. I'll tell you a funny story about foxes in a moment. Wolves like things direct and blunt. Wolves prefer the least amount of preamble. Wolves don't want to have a 5-minute conversation about your sister and how's your tennis game and how's the weather before you get down to talking about the details that matter. Wolves would like to deal with the issues first, and maybe if there's some time later, connect. But they're in the middle of digging 5 different ditches, fixing a half a dozen fences. Like, they got missions. They don't really care much for small talk. They want to get on with things. You're busy. You understand it. It's like, I want to get on with things, right? Foxes like to speak around freedom. Simple example, which you're going to love. We had this client from northern Sweden. He lived up in the Arctic Circle. And for most of the year, you have to leave the house with your kids have to leave the house with a coat on, especially if they're small, because that's good parenting, right? It's just the right way to do things. So he came into contact with us. He was recommended to us. And he said, like, for the last 2 years, my family and I are having this dreadful experience trying to leave the house because my 4-year-old daughter for the last 2 years will not put her coat on. Now, I already know the child is a fox. Just like that, right? It took me nothing, right? So I said, so it was actually my colleague Daniel. He said, how are you telling your child to put the coat on? I said, I've got to put the coat on. I'm like, you're not giving her any choice. Like, it's not a choice. You have to put the coat on to leave the house. And he said, why don't you offer her left sleeve or right sleeve? See what happens and call me back later. So 2 weeks later, he calls him back. He's like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? Like, I've gone through hell multiple times a week trying to get my daughter to put the coat on, and all I had to do was offer her choice. I'm like, yes, foxes need freedom in their communication. As soon as she was offered left sleeve or right sleeve, she put her arms through those sleeves and they were out the door as a family with zero resistance. Zero. Because the fox psyche, from the age of 2, this is what I mean by operating system. She started resisting at 2. As soon as she could resist the instruction, she could. As soon as she was given choice, the resistance was gone. The whole family is struggling multiple times a week to leave the house. That's how important getting communication right is.
How would that work with the sheep?
Well, sheep, if you want to get anything out of a sheep, you have to connect with them first. It's not a manipulation. You have to connect with them first. Hey, how was your weekend? Good to see you. What'd you get up to? Fantastic. Hey, listen, would you mind helping me with something? I've got to take this. They're a yes. It doesn't matter what it is, they're a yes, because you've connected with them. Because connection is the preset for anything from a sheep. Wolves and sheep marry a lot. Wolves want to deal with issues first and connect maybe later. Sheep must connect first before they can deal with any issue or respond truthfully to any request for anything. Now, in the workplace, it's slightly different because there's an employment contract or agreement in place. But that all goes out the window at home. If you're a wolf and you come home to your sheep partner and start dealing with an issue, hey, I asked you to pick up the package for me. You said you were going to send me, you didn't send me a text message. Make sure you send me the text message next time. Right, let's have a romantic evening. And the sheep is like, romantic evening, I got to lie down. I got to recover. It's going to take me 3 hours to recover. Because I've been spending the last 5 hours waiting for you to come through the door. And I just want to be held. And I want to hold your hand. I want to cuddle you. And I want to look you in the eye. And I want to connect with you. And then we can talk about anything you want if we're connected. So sheep need connection before substance. Wolves want to deal with the issue before connection because they're on missions. Foxes need to experience freedom in all of their communication.
What about proclivities? Because I'm thinking I took a course a long time ago from a lady, and she said that there's certain proclivities. I think it was 3. It could have been more, but there's verbal, there's physical, and I think there might have been like audible, something like that. But I found myself. She said basically, if you want to get something from someone who is a physical, you have to touch them before you make the ask. So it's very similar to what you're saying as far as like, giving love or something like that. I'm wondering if there's a general proclivity that people, maybe wolves are more physical or vice versa, verbal. If there's something like that as far as the communication style, as far as getting more out of them. So it's kind of like you start that process with another intangible, or I would say not intangible, but maybe nonverbal
Yeah.
if you're nonverbal in a scenario.
Quite possibly. I think it'll be depending on who this person is in your life. What I know from all of the work that I do is as soon as you understand what we're talking about with a little bit more depth, it all makes sense. It just makes sense. People, you notice that didn't produce the best response, the response I was hoping for. And then you said to them differently the next time, and it works really, really well. You realize that we like to think we have our own self-agency, but the way someone speaks to us affects our nervous system because our archetypal nature. So here's the understatement of this conversation. Our archetypal nature is the absolute totality of our entire lived experience. That's the understatement of the day. It shapes everything, George, everything. It affects our nervous system, responds well or poorly based on how we're spoken to. Foxes love story. Foxes love, like, why use 10 words when you can use 1,000? If you ask a fox, hey, what do you want for dinner tonight? Within 30 seconds, they could be telling you about this Italian meal they ate back in 1986 off the Amalfi Coast, right? Because they're gone into story. So here's the thing. Foxes think on the outside as their process of getting to their answer, and gorillas think on the inside. And then they express their answer. It's really very entertaining. So foxes want to tell stories to feel their way to their answer. Gorillas are like, I'm just asking you what you want for dinner. Why are we talking about this Italian meal you had in 1986? I'm so confused. Like, what do you want for dinner? It's just such an obvious question for a gorilla, but foxes have to talk their way through. So the headline is, these 4 operating systems have different communication styles and preferences. So once you know who the people are in your life, you get to essentially kind of get to become the elder, if that makes sense, the balanced person, because you respect our differences. You respect that this person is likely to not relax until the details have been covered. This person is likely to address issues first. This person, when they come home, they're going to need a cuddle and a hug and some eye contact and some warmth before we address anything else. And as a parent in particular, running a family, this is the difference between your vision for family becoming fulfilled and your nightmare becoming fulfilled. Because the origin of interpersonal power dynamics is archetype. So the power dynamics that are stressful, feel like they're wearing you down, in those moments of lucid honesty, you think, we're not going to make it if this doesn't change. That thing that needs to change, it's 99% an archetypal problem, likelihood, an archetypal solution. Sometimes it's a particular destructive behavior like gambling or something. But for the most part, in the homes of well-meaning, benevolent people, the power dynamic that's causing the problem is an archetypal friction. It's an archetypal friction. And it's formed by not understanding our differences the way we're beginning to talk about them now.
Is it possible to take on the characteristics or the traits of another archetype and not really know it and cause damage to the relationship?
Yes. So there's a couple of ways that this can happen. The first is, on the rare occasion that you end up in a relationship with someone that is, this isn't exactly answering your question. So sometimes if you end up in a relationship with someone that is the same archetype as you, but they're more balanced than you. So if let's just say a level 2 gorilla dates a level 6 gorilla, the level 2 gorilla will start becoming foxy. involuntary urges to be foxy show up around imbalanced gorilla energy, no matter who you are. So that's one way that we end up displaying opposite behaviors that are really unnatural for us. And the other way it happens is sometimes, for example, gorillas get so frustrated and so thwarted because if you try and pin a lie on a fox, you're going to be trying until 3 a.m. in the morning when you finally give up exhausted and broken because they're not going to admit the lie. Because if they admit the lie, then they're in prison, and prison is death. Because freedom is more important than anything. And when the gorilla sort of flops, sometimes gorilla sheep flop into apathy and resignation, the fox leaps into a pseudo gorilla role for a moment just to exact a bit of pain relief against their broken, short-term broken gorilla before normal service resumes the next day. So there are circumstances when we kind of show up differently or show up in a way that is not our archetypal home. There are some instances, but they are mostly short-term at best. I can give you another example. The way the family home that we're born into, of course, is quite important. If a wolf cub, for example, is born into a home and there is a benevolent wolf in the home, then their wolf characteristics will be welcomed, guided, honed, and they'll turn into another hopefully benevolent wolf that protects the innocent. I worked with a man who I spoke at a very large men's event in Australia not long ago, and at the end, this man stood up in front of me, like 6'4". He was huge and he was shaking with tears in his eyes. He said, "You've just explained my life." And it turns out that he was born a gorilla, but his father was had the monopoly on gorilla energy. So he was a tyrant bully, and nobody else got to express any leadership or strength in the home. So he couldn't live in his archetypal home as a child. Do you follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So then he ended up being a sheep to survive that childhood because he couldn't be a wolf either because the father dominated those two realms completely and forbid anyone from expressing those traits. So that's kind of another example where we are not who we're meant to be, or we show up in a way that's not who we truly are. So there are examples of this, and it's hugely empowering and valuable to know this. Like, yeah,
It's in that scenario, like I hear a lot about the preacher's daughter who's an absolute slut. You know what I mean? But you would never expect that coming from that kind of a modest home, or the moment that they get into college, like the cuffs are off and they're just a complete wild child, right? In that kind of a scenario, would the sheep that's been put into that role, would the pendulum swing the opposite direction for a period of time, and they would push extreme wolfness or extreme gorilla-ness, you know what I mean? Because that's something they were denied for such a long time. Like, how was that manifest in that person's life?
it's interesting because I think it's slightly different. So in the examples of the child that lived in a potentially narrow childhood, whether it's the preacher's daughter or just narrow childhood, if they're a fox child, when they finally have freedom, they're not going to know how to maturely cope with that freedom because they have got to break free of the shackles. So it's more in your example that this is a fox that was controlled throughout their childhood that then got to be very foxy. It's more like that, in my opinion, than swinging across. So it's very rare for a sheep to suddenly become a wolf. It's particularly rare because sheep really don't like conflict. They don't want any enemies. They don't want anyone to fight them. They don't want anyone to be upset with them. Sheep will apologize 60 times a day going through their life. Oh, sorry. Hey, I see. Just even even just opening a door, not seeing, sorry. Like, we're going to get the apology in quickly so that you don't get upset with us. It's anti-upset maneuvers. Sheep will run that all day, every day. So sheep are very unlikely to suddenly want to become conflict orientated. This is very unlikely.
Well, in the example that I was giving, it was if someone, let's say someone was a wolf, had that, but they were forced into a sheep role because there was already a wolf in the house that was overbearing, and they couldn't actually express their ability to be that wolf and that protector, right? They had to be forced into the sheep role. Would they typically
Yes.
overexpose themselves to that that archetype after they got that freedom from that overbearing parent, for example?
Now I completely understand. So I would say if the domination was not excessively abusive, then there's a very good likelihood as soon as they leave home or go to college and they are no longer under the influence of that moon, to go back to our planetary influences metaphor, they're very likely to express their natural wolfiness. They might go too far, especially if they had lots of conditioning from a too far wolf parent. It's possible, but definitely if they weren't like psychologically annihilated, they're likely to then become their natural orientation once they're free from the oppressive presence of that parent. Yes. Yeah.
So
The thing to say is that it's very rare for someone to it's almost nobody changes their archetypal home. It's you. It's just you. It's just the way you are. The only expressions I have of that are there's about 2 people who think they were sheep and then they took the abuse no more and became wolves and they've never gone back. But I personally think they were probably wolves all along, but the violent nature of their childhood at the beginning meant they had no way of, there was nothing other than just a sheep expression, but underneath they were a wolf cub waiting to find their Lion King growl. I don't think we change our, now there is a caveat to that, which is it's very observable that a sheep woman who becomes a mother becomes a gorilla by what's the word? Necessity. And the mother instinct is you've got to be organized. If you're not organized, it's a disaster. So the mother instinct plus necessity, gentle women often become gorillas to run the household, to raise the children. But I don't think they're still underneath yearning to be held and cuddled and emotional connection and to be part of community. But the necessity of their day job is to become organized and attend to details, which makes them look and present like a gorilla. But underneath, there's still a gentle person that wants love and connection.
I'm going to ask about the 5th archetype, that the elephant in the room. And that is, what happens when you have a sheep and a wolf, but all of a sudden you've got a fox as a child? Do you look at the archetype of the postman to say it was the postman a fox? Or how does that happen? How does it come out to where if those 2 categories are not really there, how do you get something that might be totally, or an archetype of the child that is totally off from the 2 parents?
I am not a geneticist, but my best observations are that this has got nothing to do with genetics or DNA. What's my evidence for this? I've worked with multiple twins and I worked with a woman who had triplet boys who were identical. So she spoke to me once on a group call
with tears rolling down her cheeks. And she said, don't worry, I've got tears of joy and tears of rage. And she said, my tears of rage are because I've been trying, the boys were 20 at the time, I think. She's like, I have every single book on raising boys. If I don't have it, it doesn't exist. I've read them all. I've got them all. I've tried to apply them all. Not a single one of these books explained that my children have different operating systems and explained the operating systems the way you have in 3 weeks. I've been trying to apply parenting styles to 3 different human beings, but they look the same. And she had, of course, no grasp that we're not the same. So therefore, I can only assume it's deeper than our DNA until someone who's an expert in genetics comes along and says, we've identified the DNA that is your archetypal nature. Then I'm going to go with it's deeper than our DNA, because identical triplet boys have different archetypal natures. So we are going to have, so often, you know, the people who make parenting look easy? More often than not, unbeknownst to them, they've had a child that's the same archetype as them. So a gentle mother with a gentle child makes life look easy. A gorilla parent with a gorilla child, life looks easy. A wolf parent with a wolf cub, etc., etc. I worked recently with a really fabulous man. He's a wolf, big heart. He's got 2 boys. Neither of them are wolves. He's got a fox cub and a sheep, a lamb. And he came onto my programs because he wanted to transform his relationship with his whole family. And now he has the best relationship he's ever had with both of his sons, because now he deeply understands who they are. And now because before he felt like he couldn't express his innate instincts for fatherhood, which is to raise warrior boys, right? Wolf boys. And he felt thwarted and a failure, and like his boys were not respecting it. You can imagine, it's not difficult to imagine that kind of confusion. Now he has the best relationship he's ever had with them. And now, of course, it's possible for him to share the gifts, the masculine traits and gifts of wolf male qualities in the right way, you see. So back to your question, which is coming back to me. It's the parents that struggle often with their children. It's because their child is the opposite archetype to them. But nobody knows this. It's staggering how few people know this. And they don't know this because our archetypal nature is the absolute totality of our worldview. Like, most people can't even imagine that any human would think anything different in the way we feel it, because it's so absolute. As soon as, what happens when people discover this is almost unanimously in my work with my clients, people have the best relationship with their children they've ever had. They have the best Christmas they've ever had with their family, the best Thanksgiving we've ever had as a family, the best family holiday we've ever had as a family. This is sort of the consistent feedback my team and I get, which is very rewarding. Let's be clear, we love it. But we love it because archetypal wisdom explains to the people responsible for family homes what is going on inside the family home from an archetypal perspective. Doesn't take long. So we're not meant to have a child that makes parenting easy. And the reason for that, not everyone is supposed to, is because we live in a growth-centric universe. We live in a growth by challenge universe. We're not meant to marry our childhood sweetheart, win the lottery, never have an argument, and live in some kind of utopia. We're meant to grow through challenge. Life is supposed to be challenging. We're meant to struggle with our partners, which is why we often marry our opposites. We're meant to struggle with our children because we're meant to discover more about ourselves than we previously knew. Until we have found ourselves drowning in our own wretchedness, wanting to give up, we don't really know who we are. And there's something about the challenge of parenting and committed relationships that the people that have been through it, they know. And the people that have attempted to avoid it and take the hedonistic path, they don't know. It's a growth by challenge universe. And the thing about understanding this is that you don't bypass the challenge, you just get through it much, much faster. You know, a lot of the time it's like hacking through a dense forest. I've never been in a really dense forest, but what I've been told is it can take an hour to go 5 meters, 10 meters. It's dense forests. It's very difficult terrain. And that's what marriage feels like for a lot of people. But archetypal wisdom clears a path through the forest. You still have to go through the forest, but you don't have to hack through the dense growth. You just go down the path. And it's night and day.
We've talked a lot about the wolf sheep and the fox and gorilla situation. But what about the cross-pollination, you know, or the opposite? Are those typically very rare? Are they incompatible? Are they compatible? Can they be compatible?
Then they're common enough. What is rare is same archetype relationships for life. They're rare. If you imagine, let's say a gorilla and a wolf are in a relationship together. And let's say the gorilla is more imbalanced than the wolf. The wolf is going to begin to show up a bit more foxy. So the polarity presents itself over time. If the wolf and the gorilla got together, but the wolf was a bit more imbalanced, the gorilla is going to start showing up a bit more sheepy. So really, the way to understand power dynamics and the involuntary reactions and the invisible forces of the psyche, the more we understand this, the more we understand that the more imbalanced we are, the more we are the agent of chaos. The more imbalanced we are, the more we are the problem. And archetypal wisdom provides the balancing information. It provides the fundamental information and concepts to quite quickly become more balanced, archetypally speaking. And that makes us become the agent of order. We become the ordering presence in the family home and the marriage, etc. If you're listening and you have a sense like, I might be slightly more imbalanced than my partner, then it's on you to come do the work. Like, it's not a complex, like fixing jet engines is complex. Like passing veterinary exams is complex. Running a big manufacturing company is complex. Making sense of what we're talking about is not complex. It's just hidden. So you don't have to be like, I'm not the brightest spark in the box. You don't have to be 150 IQ person to get this. I make it simple. Like I use animal names because it explains a lot. Like someone will say, hey, you're being a bit foxy right now. Everybody understands what's being said. No one's saying like you're being a bit INTJ now. Now, what the heck did T stand for? Like no one's bothering with that. Like you're just being a bit
What did you
foxy.
call me?
Yeah, like what? And I'm not dissing other bodies of work. I'm just saying I've made it simple. I've made it compelling. And it's rapid change for family systems and marriages. And it makes sense of everything rapidly. Because becoming the more mature person is the great act of love. Like the most loving thing you can do is become more conscious. The most loving thing you can do is to become more balanced for your children, for yourself, for your partner, for your extended families. Because the alternative is your partner and children have to suffer your imbalanced expressions
that you're not willing to deal with for the next few decades. And that's your great act of love, making them tolerate your imbalanced idiocy because you're not willing. And that's not the highest form of love. That's not the best we've got. The best we've got is saying, I do this. It's not my best. I'm going to go work on it. The problem is, where do you work on it? That's the challenge. But if
You mentioned the work a couple times. What is the work when you say you want to work on these things? When you realize you might be a little less balanced than you should be, in a relationship. What is the work that you have to do?
Well, I'll start by saying, if we understand we live in a growth-centric universe, like we're meant to keep growing, how do we know this? If you came to me and said, hey, I'm struggling with jealousy, I want to talk to someone about it, can you recommend somebody? I said, hey, yeah, there's this guy over here, he's 70. He's still got the same beliefs and opinions that he had when he was 25. Do you want to go and have a chat with him? It's like, no, not at all. No, I want to speak to a 7-year-old that's lived their life, gathered awareness, become more aware. And I want to learn from their lived experience and the awareness they gathered. That's who I want to talk to, right? So we know that we want to gather awareness as we move through life. That's how we grow as a person. If we stop that process of learning because, I don't know, we won the lottery or we're an early adopter in Bitcoin and we just want to go off and be on the jolly forever, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for everyone. So the idea then is, throughout our lives, we gather more and more awareness from our lived experience. And in an ideal world, we become more mature, more balanced, and we upgrade our beliefs as we go through life. Like this idea that we are constantly reviewing and upgrading our belief systems over and over and over again. And we're aiming throughout life to become more, our beliefs and decisions and assumptions become more and more accurate and appropriate as we grow. Because then we can become an appropriate grandparent, supporting the struggling parent and grandchildren. What we want from our elders is not to freak out over spilt milk. We're looking for a consistent, grounded, reassuring presence from our elders, yes? So how do we become an elder? How do we become that person? Well, first of all, we understand that how we grow up is we continue to gather awareness as we live. And ideally, then we want to face the challenges. The path is through, not skirting around. And as we gather more awareness, we think more clearly and we see more clearly. And archetypal wisdom does one thing better than any other body of knowledge I've ever discovered. It helps you see more clearly. Like off the charts clarity of vision for yourself and humans. So we're aiming to become more balanced and archetypally speaking, so that we are less triggered, less reactionary, we have more emotional regulation, and we can be that, eventually we can be that calm, reassuring presence that we want our elders to be. And I think the path of eldership begins the day you say that I'm heading in that direction. This is the kind of man or woman that I aspire to be. And I think it's a virtuous path, because committing to becoming an elder is, and this is not a woo-woo phrase. I'm talking about being a good grandparent, a good member of the community that knows how to bring order to the business, to the home, to Christmas, to the church, to whatever. And living your life I call it the game of life itself. The game of life itself is a body of knowledge that I prepared to explain maturation. Once we understand the path of maturation, we can kind of set our GPS heading in that direction. And we don't want to be, I think Joe Rogan said it brilliantly. He said, no one likes an old moron. We don't want to be old and stupid.
Yeah.
That's ju-
Don't
you
move to
just-
Florida.
Yeah, like then we're just being more of the problem, you know.
How do you know
So-
that you're actually on the right track, Rory? I mean, because I think in our own lives, it's real easy for most people to think, I'm not progressing. I'm stuck. To look at themselves in the mirror and say, I should be further along in my life, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, than I am right now. How do you track that if you become keenly aware of what we're talking about right now, that this, karmic wheel of, maybe even choosing to put obstacles in our way in order to break through those obstacles, to overcome them, not skirt around them, to grow, if this is a growth universe. How do you know that you're actually making progress? Are you charting that on an Excel spreadsheet? Like how would you actually take note of that and celebrate the wins if you can even see them yourself?
I think it really starts with an identity level decision, which is, I'm going in this direction. And I don't, I want to differentiate between these. So I want to say this about the future, because I know this is a big part of your podcast. So we currently are in a fox-wolf chapter of the human species evolution. Why do we know this? Because it's very technological and very self-interested. We are not currently promoting family anywhere near as much as perhaps we should be. Not for me to comment necessarily, but it's observable. So we live in a very fox-wolf chapter, and we are having much more involved relationships with these devices than our own family members often, as an example. To try and stick with your question, because I wanted to say a couple of other things about the future. It starts with an identity level decision, which is I'm going in this direction. Like I personally want to become a trusted person the older I get. I want to do more good than harm. It's like a measure about our lives, right? We kind of want to forgive the young and the adolescent. Our prefrontal cortex is only fully developed around 25, mid-20s, right? We've got to give people a pass, right? But once we're through midlife and getting on, you've got to make a choice on some level. Am I a force for good? Or am I going to be a part of the problem? I think it's a moral standard. And I think it's a mental direction. And I think that it doesn't mean, like, you become this idea of the more you understand various subjects, but it's particularly archetypal wisdom, you become a better sailor. Doesn't mean that there are no storms. It just means you're better at getting through the storm faster and with less damage. So we want to become a better sailor, better captain, because the storms are going to come. And sometimes the storm is going to make you think, I've gone nowhere. I'm back to where I was at the beginning. But actually you're not. You're just navigating a new storm. The storms are normal. Breakdowns are normal. I like to think of breakdowns as the gift. It's like, what else am I going to do? Am I going to suffer it like a victim and feel like I'm just being punished? Or am I just going to relate to this like it's some kind of gift? I meant to, like, what's the silver lining? What's the gift? What am I supposed to learn here? What am I responsible for? How can I navigate this better next time? And for me, I think it's a direction of intent. I want to gather my awareness as I go and become. I think it's a noble aspiration to become a good member of society, or to become a more trusted member of the family, etc., as we keep going. And for some of us that had disruptive childhoods, it's an enormous challenge. It doesn't come easy for some of us. We have to deal with overwhelming urges of sabotage and unhelpful patterns. I think that's a great, it's a noble aim. I'll just put it like that.
So where's AI in all this? With a world of unlimited knowledge and manipulation, which comes with that because the AI manipulates you when you talk to it. Maybe not for a nefarious purpose, but just to tell you what you want to hear because that's how the platforms keep you on the platform. Are there any dangers, or if you're becoming a better navigator, a better sailor, how do we become better sailors as humans in this new AI landscape?
I think being very good at discerning what is helpful and appropriate use of AI and what is potentially not just sending you in the wrong direction, but potentially much worse. Like, if you want someone to edit some writing, or if you want it to come up with some marketing ideas, like, I think there's a whole bunch of cases for AI that are actually fantastic. But the moment you get into stuff that is potentially misleading, I think tread very lightly. I think it's this idea that we have, the risk is that people are going to, I think it's predictable that AI and someone is going to create, it's already happening. Like, we're going to end up with the best relationship we've ever had with an AI person. And they can help us remember birthdays. They can help us come up with Christmas ideas. Like, there's a very, very good likelihood that if we're not careful, everyone's best friend is going to become digital. And I think that's concerning.
Why?
And I think, well, because we're already children and adults alike, and I'm not impervious to this. I'm having more time on this than humans. And I think that's a risk. And I think that we're social creatures, and our mental health and our physical health and our fulfillment is linked to community and not self. I think it's very difficult to argue that that's not the case. When you have been around people that you care about, that you've fostered relationships with, and you feel welcome and a part of something, and people, as you leave that gathering or weekend, that people care about you and they want you to be okay, your mental health is through the roof. I'm going to get that from anything else, not on the same level. So I think that the currency of the future, a little bit like, clean water is a currency and fresh air is a currency. Like, the currency of the future is going to be human interaction done well, because I think more and more mental health data shows that if you spend time with a community or a group or a family that makes you feel warm and welcome and appreciated and respected, it's the best thing for you. That and clean food and good sleep. What else is going to trump that, right? Having said that, I think that the capacity for AI so I already have ideas for how I would want to apply AI. And in part of my programs, I deal directly and effectively with triggers. Our triggers are a whole conversation, which I won't go into now, but I've created a system by which I process people's triggers relatively quickly. And it's like a 90+% reduction in our triggers for the rest of our lives. And I've been working on this now for 8 years, and I do it with humans, human to human. I can imagine very easily creating, especially with the augmented reality goggles, I can totally imagine a process by which people could do that even better that way. But again, I'm talking about AI as a tool for a specific purpose, rather than becoming a substitute for humans. So I think that human interaction is going to continue. It's going to become almost like a highly valued resource. in a way that our grandparents today were like, what are you people doing? We need to come and have dinner with your family so we can make fun of you a little bit and keep your feet on the ground and come and clean up some dishes. Don't get out of yourself. Remember where you come from. Because the altar of making money and biohacking, of course it has its place, but if it becomes the church of your life, we risk losing connection with what's truly meaningful, which is community. And we all yearn, all 4 archetypes have the same yearning, which is to be seen, heard, understood, and made welcome. We all yearn to feel like we belong and that we matter and that we are appreciated for our gift. And the risk of the future progress of AI is that people risk becoming increasingly ostracized in a digital world. And well, that's going to be great for big pharma, because that's going to be a pill for that. They already exist, of course, but the best mental health is being around the people that care about you meaningfully. It's very difficult to be depressed when you spent a weekend with people that care about you, laughing and sharing food and telling stories and genuinely wanting to know how you are because we care about you. It's very difficult to struggle after that until you get home back to your old environment that has made you feel that way in the first place. But you get my point. I think that the potential for AI to be created as a tool to heal trauma, become more balanced, become less triggered, to become much more naturally effective in communication, I can see the merit of that, and it could be staggering, but not the digital best friend, best relationship of my life, slightly dystopian future that I'm slightly concerned about. And, it's going to start with a really obvious invitation. Like you need to have your digital VA. You're going to be in your inbox. You're going to tell them all your birthdays. You're going to tell them what your sister likes, and they're going to help you remember things. You need to write your card. They'll probably have access to your Amazon account or your card buying account. And they're just going to be your super helpful VA, keeping your life on track. They're going to probably have access to your fridge at some point. They're going to order the food in, prepare your meal plans. And just like that, you're going to be laughing with them and telling them stories, and they're going to be your best friend just like that. And they're going to know exactly how to make you feel fantastic. But when you're offline, in the real world, and there are barbarians at the gate. There are people, I think it was Ben Shapiro talked about, like, the more people go into metaverse or whatever those places are, like, that's a disaster in the long run, because the barbarians at the gate, they're not in the metaverse. They're sharpening their swords. So on some level, the real world continues. On every level, the real world continues, no matter how lost we get. Let's not finish on a dystopian note.
Man, that's very sobering, Rory. I mean,
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, this is
because I think it's what people need. They need to hear it.
Create for me again, if you wouldn't mind, the background of your becoming unbreakable, right? It's like the future is not a guaranteed civility. We've been enjoying a period of civility. It's not guaranteed, as much as we'd all like to think it is.
And if you look at the map of Europe, I saw this once where they had a time lapse. I think it was over 2,000 to 4,000 years or something like that. The map of Europe, because obviously America, it's not very long, right? But the map of Europe, and you see the borders change and then expand and then contract and then go back to the natural and then expand again and then contract. no one in those times thought that it was going to change. They thought this is like, we've done this, we've moved this far, now it's going to stay here. No one had any idea it was going to expand further, contract. They were going to lose their home. They were going to have to call themselves something else. They're going to have to identify as a different nationality or whatever the scenario is, just because they stayed in one place. So to your point, this is we're in a very changeable space, and right now we're going through an expansion and contraction all at the same time.
Yes. And I have to tread carefully because I'm committed to not sharing my beliefs and opinions on the subjects that divide us, because I want everyone to be welcome to come and discover this great gift of archetypal wisdom, because it's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, is discovering this fully. Absolutely no question. And it will help you become less breakable and less triggerable. It'll help you improve your marriage, become a better parent, make sense of the people in your life, become a better business owner, better leader, and become more centered and more balanced and more effective in all your human interactions. And but the urges within humans to rise up and take over the country next door hasn't gone away. We're still basically violent, hairy apes that have figured out how to make our caves above ground. We're just, love only conquered the reason we get into relationships about 175 years ago. We are attempting to have love-based relationships, which is the most emotionally complex model of relationships ever created. And we've only been doing it for 175 years. And most of that time was the 20th century. And it's like everyone that lived through the first half of the 20th century gets a pass, because it was just endless trauma for everyone. So we're trying to have the most complex relationships ever known in human history, which is essentially a trauma healing therapeutic partnership between two traumatized people that don't want to be told how to heal their trauma from the other person, with no map and no sense of the archetypal nature of their partner, or the fact that we're running different operating systems and have a different interest in communication styles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we bring children in who don't fit our mental mold of how we want our children to be often. And we're trying to deal with the financial pressures. Like, life is challenging. Growing up is hard. Adulting, I'm not a fan. So we need the best solutions we can find to help cut a path through the forest. So
I can see what you've shared with us today, Rory, is giving a lot of people who might be a little more conservative. Maybe they're not as open, they're not as willing to put themselves out there to actually architect situations if they know that they need some of those opposites. They need more love in their life, and they're maybe being a little bit too consumed with AI or too consumed with gaming or escapism, to find a way back to the human element. I think that what you've given is a roadmap to
Yes.
being human again and connection. And I love that about our conversation and about your work, which didn't happen overnight. It took decades to figure this out. And I just want to say thank you for going deep into that and sharing that. And I'm hoping that AI will also learn some of these things from our conversation and be able to give people some guidance from time to time to understand their partner better, because I think a lot of people are going to be going to AI for marriage counseling and understanding, because I've done it myself. I've asked, about the other person, like, what did I do wrong? Or how do I understand? How do I communicate better? Whether the answer was right or wrong, like, you seek whatever answer you can get from whatever safe place you can get it from, and AI is what we think is a safe place, but all that data is being logged and stored and remembered. It's not as safe as we think it is.
No, and it's going on what it knows, and an enormous amount of what's out there, particularly in the relationship space, is incomplete. I just want to go back and tell you a super quick story. This thing about returning to how did you say it? Humanity or human connection. So just really simple things like this guy called me up the other day. He said, "I've got to tell you," he said, "I just had the best conversation I've ever had with my sister. We've known each other for 48 years. I just literally had the best conversation I've ever had with her. This is unbelievable." Now, you're just not going to get that from AI. But what you are going to get is you're going to get that and the best relationship you've had with your children in a group dialogue discussing archetypal wisdom. It's very difficult to get the answers you're looking for from your partner, even though they're standing right in front of you, because we're not designed to want to be educated by our partner. We don't want our partner to be our teacher, our parent, or our coach. But when you get a group of 60 odd people or 100 people in a room or on a Zoom call describing these operating systems, it describes your wife, describes your eldest daughter, describes your best friend. And inside of that human dialogue, it makes sense of almost everyone in your life. You're just not going to get that from AI. Sorry. It's not going to happen. Not as quickly and effectively as this. It's I'll give you a really simple example, right? If a fox is married to a gorilla and they're struggling with the gorilla, and then the fox listens to 12 gorillas explain what it's like to be a gorilla, it changes them forever. Because real humans have explained it. And then they go back and they interact with their wife and they relate to them totally differently. You're not the enemy. You love me. You're trying to love me, and I've been resisting, and I'm sorry. I find it difficult to say yes when I don't experience choice. So sometimes our fox clients say, "Hey, can you just say that one more time?" And what that means is, please, can you give me some choice because I want to say yes. Left sleeve or right sleeve. It's just my nervous system. I really struggle being told what to do, but I really want to say yes. Because I know that you've got my best. I didn't know you had my best interest. I just felt like you were telling me what to do. Now I know you've got my best interest, and I love you, and I know that you love me, and I really want this to work. Why? Because I saw 12 gorillas explain you to me. You've tried to explain it somehow badly, but it never landed. But when 12 gorillas explain their operating system through the lens of archetypal wisdom, I'm a different person. My marriage to you is different now. You're not going to get that from ChatGPT. Just not. So us humans still matter. Okay. Big time.
Rory, for those who want to connect, follow your work, learn more about their archetype and how to better understand the world around them and level up, in this really interesting new world that we're walking into, sometimes kicking and squeaking or being dragged into it. How would they do that?
Archetypalrelationships.com. Archetypalrelationships.com. If you go to /webinar, my next live introductory training is pretty much always there. You can come and meet me in person, ask some questions. And I spent 19 years working on this body of knowledge. And I spent the last 8 years preparing the process for people, good people like you guys, to very quickly experience the tremendous power and value of this work. And I'd be honored to connect with any of you. Please communicate to us that you heard us through the Unbreakable podcast. We always love to know how people found us. But that's really it. Archetypalrelationships.com /webinar if you want to come and meet me in person straight away. And that's the place to start.
Awesome. I'm assuming that you're not going to create Rory.ai anytime soon.
No plans. No plans. I'm barely on social media. I'm still too busy working with the people that find me. Social media is coming but I do have a bit of a feeling that I can create the process that I've been working on for the last 8 years, a part of the process to be precise. There's a particular exercise that I do, that I get my clients to do, that is absolutely transformational. And it's the piece that reduces triggers enormously. And it heals trauma, aspects of trauma. That's a big statement. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand it. I'm speaking about specific parts of things. So I know that I can create something there. And if I find the right partner, then I'll do that.
Well, I would love to invite you to come back and talk to us about triggers sometime in the near future, because I think that's going to be a fantastic conversation.
I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rory. Thank you for everybody for listening, and we'll see
Thank
you
you,
on the
everybody.
next session. If you've been waiting for a sign to finally reset to get your foundation solid, this is it. Join our 3-day online Unbreakable Bootcamp to help you build strength across your mind, your body, your emotions, and your finances. You can go to unbreakablebootcamp.com right now and register while it's still free, or click the link in the description. Again, that's unbreakablebootcamp.com.